Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Stephanie Hopper, and I'm the Director of Development Solutions at Capfinity, and joined today by Celine, my co-host for Lead Strong. Just a few words about Capfinity. We're a global business. We're based in various locations across the States, Sydney, Australia, and Birmingham, London, and Dublin. And we've been helping organisations find candidates, develop their employees, and also transform their business around our USP of strengths-based assessment and development for well over 16 years. Celine and I both work on Altitude, Capfinity's leadership proposition, which is a market-leading method of assessing and developing your leaders through a strengths lens.
Thank you, Steph. Hi, everybody. Delighted to see you all again. So Celine Floyd, I'm the Director of Leadership Assessment at Capfinity, helping organisations to assess for selection and development. I am delighted to be joined today by two wonderful guests who I will now ask to introduce themselves. So Laura, let's start with you. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself to the group?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Celine. So I'm Laura Pettitt. I'm Head of Talent or Head of Global Talent for WorldRemit, effectively responsible for talent acquisition, talent management, which includes leadership, hopefully with the likes of Celine, also employer brand, diversity and inclusion, and a fair mix of employee engagements thrown in as well.
Many hats, many wonderful hats, which you have worn so well over the years, Laura. Thank you for joining us. Del, hi, welcome.
Hi, Celine. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Del Hossain. I'm the Managing Director of the Adrem Group. We're an architecture and design recruitment business. I'm also a lecturer at UCL on design leadership. So I basically teach and train designers how to be leaders of the future. And I run a podcast called The Wow Mind, which is kind of like a positive psychology type of spin thing.
Fantastic. Again, multiple hats. I love this. How interesting. I love your kind of architecture focus there, and can't wait to hear more about the amazing work you do, Del. Thank you to both of you. Steph, back over to you.
Thanks, Celine. And today's topic is probably one that I would imagine most of us have got something to say on, and that's all about change facilitation, and the importance of that for leaders. And I think, probably the business world has arguably seen more disruption in the last 14 months than it had in the previous 10 years or something. The stakes are kind of higher than ever. Changes that I guess we thought could take years actually took months or weeks or days, and probably confounded all of us. And I think really tough for leaders that there have been so many overlapping changes, that have occurred simultaneously and at pace. So, sort of a health crisis, an economic crisis, logistical crisis in terms of the way we work. So I think anyone leading who doesn't feel like they've got a PhD in sort of navigating ambiguity right now has been sitting on a desert island for the past kind of 18 months drinking a cocktail, and I kind of wish I'd been there.
Sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess, just thinking about that sort of leading through ambiguity, a first question for both of you is, what has the last year, I guess, taught you about navigating through ambiguity as a leader, and sort of keeping the wheels on the track when the path has certainly been full of unexpected twists and even a few U-bends? Let me come to Laura first of all. What are your thoughts, Laura?
Oh, it's a really tough question, because I don't think I've stopped learning because things keep changing. I think that you can always make plans. Most of us will build a strategy, but it's just knowing that they don't always work and being able to deviate quickly. And I think just being fair with your team, not just for businesses, but for people. Well, the world has changed so much, hasn't it? And all, my team are every time I start somewhere, I say they're the best team ever, but they're incredible. I mean, genuinely the best people I've ever worked with, but they're so different. So different. And there's that age-old saying, isn't there, that treat everybody the way you want to be treated. I don't agree with it. I think you treat them the way that they want to be treated. So there's an element of planning with the understanding that change is the only constant. So it's likely to happen, making sure you're there to support people through it, maybe having a plan A, plan B, and then as many plans as you might need to do if you're thinking about disaster recovery. We were really fortunate. We carried on recruiting through the whole pandemic. In fact, recruited more than most people do outside of a pandemic. And all of our plans for leadership and development, employer brand, are all still going ahead. But actually, the change in the market has really impacted our team. So I don't know, maybe that I'm leading differently, other than to say I think I've probably learned more humility. And I'm hoping for the team as well that they've seen that. And I think as an organisation, we've probably all learned a bit more humility. And that's because even today we're all talking to each other from our houses, and there's just this constant, it's not just about always on, but you just see people in a different light, don't you? And I think the human element of the contact has changed, and it's taken us certainly from employer to employee to human. That probably sounds a little bit fluffy, but and maybe not the best answer, but it's the only way that I can really do it, which is you can build plans, they might not work. You just have to be resilient enough to deal with the fallout of that if they don't work, but also pre-plan enough to understand that they might not, and be ready to pick up the pieces, but also just make sure people are okay along the way. I think most of my team and the wider business are okay with change. It's more about how we handle it and how we treat each other whilst we go through it that has the biggest impact.
I love that. I love what you said at the beginning, actually, Laura, about you haven't stopped learning over the last year, 18 months, which I think is so true for all of us. And as you said, just being able to pivot constantly is so necessary, even with the best plans that we've got. Del, what are your thoughts in terms of some of your learnings?
I think the main thing is you just have to remember that you're no wiser than anybody else, really. And all you're really trying to do is do your best. And trying to, it sounds like I've got a stream coming. Can you hear me okay? Okay, right, fine.
Yeah.
And I think what I've found with our team, you find the good qualities of your team. They rise and they're all kind of very supportive. And you kind of think, well, is it me looking after you or you looking after me? It seems to be incredibly reciprocal, you know, and I think as long as you're just honest and sincere with them about things, this is where we are, this is what's happening, this is what we need to do, and communication all the time, on a regular basis, it's so helpful, and that's what I've found to be invaluable, really. And I think where things have gone wrong over the course of the year, at the very beginning of the first lockdown, I think there was a little bit of a kind of rabbit in the headlights where everybody felt slightly, is this a bit like a holiday, or what is this like? And everyone was a little bit more relaxed. But by the second one, it was kind of serious, and you realize that your business is under jeopardy, that your, you know, staff are on furlough and people are feeling nervous. And then you really start to find the kind of leader you are. And I think it has to be about being compassionate, because you're dealing with people's lives. And when you have this window into their life, and I think as Laura put it there, you're meeting people in their homes through the screen, and you've got that window into their lives, then it's something precious that I think as a leader, you've got to massively respect and see, okay, well, how can we help build this? And communication is everything. And you lose your staff if you don't communicate properly. I think that's what I've learned, that just communicate regularly, have empathy. And I do believe, as Laura said, maybe unlike, I don't think Laura believes completely on that one, but I do believe treat people the way you want to be treated, because I think we're all kids. We're all kids who happen to have got older, you know, and we just, in some respects, we want to believe. It's like when you're a kid still, and you want to believe in something because you still have optimism and hope, and you want somebody to help, and you want to believe in your leader that they believe in something. So as the leader, you totally have to be kind of heart open and saying, come on, we'll do it. And that's been so helpful. And the staff for me have been fantastic, because now they're sending me stuff all the time and saying, well, think about this, do this, what about this? This would be awesome, Del, well done with this. And I think you need it reciprocally back as well, because you're a human being too.
Absolutely. I love the fact that both of you have cited the need to be teachable and humble, actually, as a leader, and and the fact that actually we've seen this window into each other's lives, which was so different from what we knew before. We would sort of disguise our homes, wouldn't we, and what our home life was like, and now there's kind of been more of an opening up, I guess, which is fascinating.
I think the really interesting thing that you just made me think of, Del, when you were talking about who's looking after who, I love that. And because we talk about humility, and I think often we think about being humble from the perspective of knowledge or skills or experience, and acknowledging that other people have insights or views or learnings they can share with us. But I wonder if we talk enough about being humble emotionally and recognizing that actually it is our teams as leaders that do often lift us up as well, or make us feel better, or give us that energy. And I think we're quite hard on ourselves, or leaders are hard on themselves, thinking that they have to be the full package and they have to constantly be the strong one, and that it's okay actually to show that vulnerability and for it to be two-way. I talked a lot about talk to my leaders a lot about that, and I think it also goes into the realms of authenticity, doesn't it, and feeling, knowing that it's okay to be your authentic self, kind of warts and all, for want of a better phrase. So yeah, interesting. I liked that. Okay, thank you both. Really interesting reflections there. One of the other things that I kind of see and see leaders grapple with is at times of real change and unprecedented change, and as we know, we have been through this recently. I think often for a lot of people the temptation is to kind of lean in and to perhaps become more, as leaders, to become more directive, more assertive, more kind of micromanaging, more controlling, as a way to try to keep hold of what we're trying to achieve. And what we see in practice is that it can do the opposite to the people that you're leading, in terms of reducing empowerment, decreasing motivation, and kind of inspiration. So that's a really tricky one, isn't it, for leaders? How can we help leaders avoid that trap of feeling the panic and leaning in? We'll flip the order this time. So Del, if it's okay, I'll come to you.
Sure.
What do you think?
I think it's an insecurity. I think people lean in when they feel I don't know if anyone else can do it, purely because they're not sure if they can do it. So if they act on it and they do it, they at least know it's been done. But it's not that other people can't do it. And I think that insecurity is just maybe at some point somewhere you've been let down, and you're hanging on that let down emotion, And I think what's quite good, I mean, certainly for us, I've found, I've got some exceptional colleagues really, and they have been leading massively, and taking initiatives, doing things that we've never done in the company, which maybe were the world without this coronavirus they might not have done, but they've just really shone as leaders. And far from leaning in, I find myself leaning back, and thinking, God, you guys are awesome, really. And I think from that point of view, it's really reassuring that you feel stronger as a leader, because you think, well, all I really need to do is make sure that you're all being decent human beings to each other, but actually in what you're doing, you're being fantastic, and just leave them with it. Don't interfere, because there's like they say, there's many ways of, what's the expression, skinning a cat.
That's it.
But, I mean, it is that though, isn't it? Don't skin a cat. But people have got different ways of doing things. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's different, but you can get the same result at the end. And I think you just have to trust that the result is the same, or better sometimes.
Del could get a job with Capfinity, having said that, couldn't he?
Yeah, I know. Is that a strengths-based philosophy I hear there? Yeah.
Well done, Del. We'll give you a $5 later.
No, I love that, and I think again, I guess, Laura, it's relating back to what you were saying before about how we're all different. And I guess, some people also will want us to lean in more. There will be people who, if they're feeling panicked or unsure, actually maybe they will need a bit more of our time, of our airtime and of our focus. And then there will be others that actually will find that daunting. So it's knowing who you have in your team and around you, and adapting to that. That's great, Dale. Thank you. Laura, what do you think?
I mean, I was going to say the same. I think people lean in for different reasons. I think sometimes it's fear, but I don't think it's always fear because they can't do it themselves and therefore they need to do it because they're worried if they can't, their team can't. That might be one aspect. I think there are lots of different things. Might be capability within the team, capacity. Might think your team are more than capable, but they're over capacity and you don't want to burden them. Protecting the team, depending on the environment you're in. Could be speed, also could be learned behaviours. To Dale's point, it might be that somebody has experienced this before and actually has been burned. So part of it is unpicking the behaviours of a leader before you can even suggest, before you can really get to solving the problem. You almost need to get to the root cause of why they might be leaning in and why they might be micromanaging, because I don't think most people want to do it. That said, people are different. Some people it will be their natural style. And I think the unfortunate thing sometimes with leadership is that a lot of us become managers and then leaders, but we were never trained to manage. We were never trained to lead. And talking about strengths, we might not like it. Like in the tech space, how many people are experts in their field, but the only way for them to develop is that they become leaders or managers of large teams. And usually if you are that good, sweeping generalization, but if you are, usually you're that good because you love your subject matter, not because you particularly want to spend time helping other people. So I think first of all, it's understanding what's going on behind the scenes before you even try to solve the problem. I think the other thing, once you've done that, is providing safe parameters for people. So where you will have, I'm the biggest risk taker, Celine, I've done your psychometric test, and it's like,
it's true, it's all true.
Yeah, I can be pretty measured, and then when it comes to taking risks, I'm so far the other way. Some people won't ever want to employ me for that reason. So just realised this is live.
It's mitigated, and there's lots of strengths within Laura's profile.
It is mitigated, but I just say I've learned for it to be mitigated. But naturally, it probably wouldn't have been. But I guess the point that I'm saying there is you have to think about your team, because give somebody too much that isn't confident enough, again, for any of the reasons we've just said, and they'll fail, and that's horrible. Give somebody too little and you frustrate them. So I think it's not just about the leader, it's also about assessing that team and understanding, and perhaps saying if somebody's at a certain level, actually will allow you to make a decision up to this value, so from a cost perspective, or up to this impact on a candidate, whatever else it might be. Anything above that, then let's talk about it together. So I don't think I wish it was as simple as just the leader, but I think it's bigger on a cultural perspective of actually what's the dynamics of the entire organisation and how does that play out in reality, and how do we work together? Because the flip side is you get some people that don't micromanage at all, and there's a danger in both. You don't want to micromanage, but you know what I mean. You get some that overmanage and some that don't at all, and it's kind of the happy medium, but mostly based on the culture, and then the leadership, and then the people that you're looking to bring into that team.
Yeah, we talk. Sorry, Dale, we talk a lot about that in our work around, nothing exists in isolation. So you can do all the work in the world with the individual, but like you say, if you haven't got the supporting infrastructure or the culture that's driving those behaviours, then it's, it won't deliver in its entirety. Dale, what were you going to say?
I was going to support that, really. I think there's, if you create that environment where people feel confident to try things, I think people are reticent to try when they think they're going to be shot down if it doesn't work. But if you're creating a platform and saying, look, you're not going to fail, if we don't get the outcome that we want, well, we've learned something, and then we'll know next time. Yeah. It's just taking the sting out of failure.
Yes. My colleague Carla did Laura's sick to the back teeth of me talking about this. She's heard me recommend this book about 15 times. The No Rules Rule book about the Netflix culture and the culture they've created there. And one of the really key interesting things they've done, Del, is put failure as just a kind of expectation, you know, a norm, an expectation. And actually everyone is expected to innovate, create and fail. And if you're not talking day to day about the failures that you've had, then there's, you know, a red flag goes off, you know, what's wrong. So it's encouraged, it's celebrated, and they try and push through this real blameless culture. So you know, and clearly they're doing some wonderful things commercially, so it's really interesting. Go on, Laura.
Well, I do think it's brilliant, but I think I saw Paddy McCord talk in San Francisco. She was incredible, and Netflix always makes me smile when people talk about it, because actually I don't know her personally, but she was quite tough on stage. I loved her because she wasn't too fluffy.
I think the culture's quite tough. It is a tough culture.
She was very much like, engagement isn't me giving you 12 different types of water. This is a contract. I'm paying you to work. I respect you, but you respect me. I think sometimes there's a danger of don't kill me, Celine, but like the obsession with the Facebooks or the Googles.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Try to build their culture or design the way of kind of orchestrate their organization around that. Now, failure in a high growth startup is inevitable. So you have to accept it, and you almost want to champion it. Failure in the military is life or death, and I think the problem, honestly,
or health sector.
Health, exactly. I think they say problem, and that sounds quite negative, but having worked for a few organisations now and got in and looked at startups and looked at what we're trying to achieve, it's like there's this utopian view that if we all fail fast and we all have, I mean, we should all be humble, but you know what I mean? We've all got like the buzzwords of today, then we'll be really successful. And I don't necessarily agree. I think your leadership style has to be very much based on who you are as a business and what you're trying to achieve. So if you're a bank and you're highly regulated, you can't take a ton of risk. You're going to be hierarchical. So I think your leadership framework has to follow that, and it has to be really transparent. Equally though, even Mark Zuckerberg got in trouble for failing fast, but he's infamous for talking about failing fast. So I just think, for me, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong, but more what's right or wrong for you as a person and how you match to that organisation.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you're spot on. And Steph, you and I, you know, talk a lot about that in terms of how. You know, you have to look at the organisation as opposed to, and the industry as opposed to just the organisation as well, because there are sector specific things. And Del, do you see that with, you know, with your architecture as a sector?
Or with creative industries, I was thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very much so. From organisation to organisation, there's different cultures, different behaviours, different ways of engaging with each other. And, you know, some organisations are super corporate. You know, and they because they're reflecting the clients that they have. So if your clients are all, you know, kind of FTSE 100 companies and banks and things, then I guess you have to reflect a certain degree of what they do. But then those organizations themselves are trying to be a lot more humane than they were and show that they're people. You know, so I think within that, it's almost like a wave, really. There has been a wave of, for a long time within the culture of environment, what's been fashionable, and what's been fashionable has changed. And I guess now, the point we're in now, when you get to the bottom of the barrel, like a recession or like a pandemic as we found, you find out who you are. When you look at your balance sheet and it looks very unhealthy, you find out who you are. You find out how you're going to behave, and you find out how you want to behave with your colleagues. And if you're the kind of person that panics and everybody's wrong and you blame everyone, then you're going to create a certain type of culture, which will be massively uncomfortable, and people won't want to say that. Whereas if you kind of look at it in its entity and say, I see why we're here, let's rebuild this. And as long as you're looking forward, I think, as a leader, as long as you have that optimism, you can create a good environment and a culture which is about the people.
It's that hope and inspiration, and it through change that is so critical and so important. And something, Laura, you said a few minutes ago just reminded me. Yesterday I was doing a coaching session with a leader, and you were talking about those technical experts, that become leaders by accident kind of thing, but it's the only way they can develop their career. And we used this metaphor in the coaching session that just went for ages between us, where we were talking about him transitioning from being the brilliant tuba player to being the conductor, and how uncomfortable it was to oscillate between, he wanted to be that tuba player that was known for absolutely everything he could do in that role, and how uncomfortable it was to stand in front of this enormous orchestra full of people with completely different skills to himself. And a lot of it was about imposter syndrome, to be honest.
It's so hard. Oh, sorry, Celine.
No, go on.
I was going to say it's really hard, because I think I probably used to be that person. If I'm truthful, it's taken me a long time to get here, because you used to be the person that people would go to, and the sign of a good leader is not to ghost you anymore, because they don't need to. Like, you're doing a good job when you never hear from anybody. But that's then really difficult, because you guys are the psychologists, I'm not, but we all have an innate need to be wanted and needed, don't we? And all of a sudden you're not needed, which probably means you're the best you've ever been, but equally you're going, well, am I? Because no one's coming to me with a problem. What's going on? And on the team level, you start to feel a bit left out.
It's a hard it's a really hard transition. It is. Steph, I was just saying, I love that analogy. And if you imagine that, so you're conducting, but then all of your musicians are changing, and you're changing venue, and the music suddenly changes without warning. Just going back to the change facilitation, like that is the arena that leaders are working in at the moment. It's daunting. It is daunting. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we are almost at the end of our time. And I guess it's worth just summarising for a second some of the things that we've thought about around change facilitation. I've definitely heard loud and clear from Del and Laura how important it is to be teachable when we're leading through change, and that humility being something that's really kind of come to the fore, but also that compassion for other people and being respectful of what they need. The first thing Laura said has really stuck with me around I've just not stopped learning, and I think that's so true for so many of us as leaders. And then just thinking about the moments maybe where it is appropriate to lean in and support a bit more, and other moments where we need to step away. Del, just any final thoughts from you to close?
I think that period that you're a leader, I always say to myself, we come with nothing and we leave with nothing, and all we can do is make our contribution in between. So what is the contribution we can make? It's to be of service. So I think as a leader, our role is to be the best service we can be to make other people flourish.
Love that. Laura, what about you?
That's hard to follow. I mean, I'm not going to be nearly as good. I did say I've been delivering training all morning, so my brain is a bit slow. Can you ask me next time, please? I think really simply, and I'm still stealing what Del said, but it links to the humility piece, but just authenticity. Like, we all have bad days, and sometimes you don't know the answers. But certainly for me, if I'm following someone, like a true leader for me, I will follow if I believe that they're being honest, and if they're having a tough day, there's still a level of professionalism that you need to hold realistically, depending on the level that you're at. But being an authentic leader, whichever way that is, if you are a micromanager or you're a complete hands-off or you're a nurturer, I think authenticity is the most important thing for me above anything.
Love it. And Celine?
Yeah, just that, this is one of my favourite pieces of our leadership framework, the change facilitation, because as you said at the beginning of this session, Steph, there is not one organisation on this planet at the moment that is not undergoing some kind of change. So I think all we can do most impactfully is open up this conversation about how we all feel personally about change and the need to be agile and being cognizant of how people in our team feel about it, and just constantly reading the room and reading the audience and knowing that we won't get this right first time, but this isn't going to go away. So I'm a glass half hopeful kind of girl. I'm like, let's throw ourselves into this. Let's try and find the positives. And there's lots we can do to help each other through this change, as we've seen in the last 18 months.
Brilliant. Thanks, Celine. And that's it, I guess, for episode 4. So we will see you in 2 weeks' time, where we'll be talking about self-insight for leaders with Ellie Tomlins from Tate & Lyle and Rachel Rose from Lloyd's Register. So we'll see you then. Thank you, Del and Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steph. Thanks,
Thank you,
Steph.
Steph. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.